The snow had just begun to fall over the small town of Yelenovka when Marina Sergeyevna stepped into the bank on Lipovaya Street, shaking the cold from her scarf. It was the kind of gray, quiet morning that made everyone move a little slower, as if the whole world had wrapped itself in a heavy wool blanket. She had come only to pay her electric bill, nothing more, and she expected to be in and out within 10 minutes. The bank was nearly empty. A young teller sat behind the glass, tapping something into her computer. An old radiator hissed faintly near the window. And in the corner, on one of the plastic chairs meant for waiting, sat an old man. He was thin, with a coat that looked too big for his shoulders, as though it had been bought for a younger, broader version of himself. His hands rested on a wooden cane, and his eyes, pale blue and tired, followed Marina as she walked past him toward the line. "Excuse me," he said. His voice was soft, almost apologetic, the voice of a man unused to asking for anything. "Excuse me, young lady." Marina turned. She was in her 30s, dressed simply, her dark hair tucked under a knitted hat. She had never been called young lady by anyone in years, and something about the phrase, old-fashioned and gentle, made her stop. "Yes," she said. The old man looked down at his hands for a moment, as if gathering the courage to speak. Then he looked up again, and his eyes were wet, though he did not seem to be crying, not exactly. It was more like a man standing at the edge of something enormous, trying not to fall in. "Could you," he said slowly, "pretend to be my granddaughter? Just for 5 minutes." The words hung in the quiet air of the bank. Marina blinked. She had heard strange requests before, but nothing like this. "I'm sorry?" she asked, not unkindly, but genuinely confused. The old man gestured toward the teller's window with his cane. "They will not let me withdraw my pension without someone confirming who I am. My documents are old, my hands shake too much to sign properly anymore, and the woman there," he lowered his voice, "she says the system needs a family member to co-sign for elderly clients without a phone that works. My phone is broken. My granddaughter lives far away, in Novosibirsk. She cannot come." He paused, and his fingers tightened slightly on the cane. "I only need someone to stand beside me. To say that I am Foma Petrovich Sokolov, and that I am who I say I am. It will take 5 minutes. That is all I ask." Marina hesitated. There was a small, sensible voice in her mind, the voice that had grown louder ever since she moved to this town 2 years ago, that told her to be careful, that told her strangers in banks were sometimes not what they seemed. But there was another voice too, quieter, older, the one that remembered her own grandfather, who had died 3 winters ago, alone in a hospital room while she was stuck in traffic 3 streets away. She looked at the old man's face again. There was nothing sharp in it, nothing calculating. Only tiredness, and a kind of quiet dignity that comes from a lifetime of not wanting to be a burden. "All right," she said. "I can do that." His shoulders, which had been tense, seemed to loosen just slightly. They walked together to the window. The teller, a young woman with tired eyes and a name tag that said Alina, glanced up. "Foma Petrovich," Alina said, not unkindly but with the flat patience of someone repeating themselves. "As I explained, without a co-signer present, I cannot release funds above the limit. It is bank policy for elderly clients whose accounts have shown unusual activity. This is my granddaughter," the old man said, gesturing to Marina. "She has come." Marina felt her heart quicken, the smallest flush of guilt rising in her chest, though she reminded herself she was doing nothing wrong, only standing beside a stranger who needed help. "Yes," she said. "I'm here." Alina studied her for a moment, then looked back at her screen. "Your name, please." And here Marina paused, because she realized she did not know what name to give. She could not use her own last name, Volkova, because it would not match anything on file. She glanced, just for a moment, at the old man, and he seemed to understand her hesitation, for he said quietly, almost to himself, "Her name is Katya. Katya Sokolova." Marina repeated it, her voice steady. "Katya Sokolova." Alina typed the name into the system, and for a long moment, nothing happened. The radiator hissed. Somewhere outside, a car passed slowly through the snow, its tires making that soft, muffled sound that snow makes on tires. Marina became aware of her own heartbeat, aware that she had just told a small lie inside a bank, aware that the whole thing could unravel in an instant if the system asked for something more, an identification card, a signature that matched a name she did not have. But Alina only nodded. "That matches the emergency contact on file," she said. "Thank you. I will process the withdrawal now." Marina exhaled slowly. Beside her, the old man's hand found the edge of the counter, steadying himself, though whether from relief or from the effort of standing so long, she could not tell. While they waited for the transaction to complete, the old man spoke, almost as if the silence needed filling. "My real granddaughter," he said, "her name is Katya too. It is not so strange a coincidence. It is a common name." He smiled faintly. "She used to visit every summer, when she was small. She would sit right there," he nodded toward the row of plastic chairs, "and wait for me while I did my banking, because in those days, this was the only bank in town, and everyone came here, and there was always someone to talk to." Marina found herself listening closely, the way one listens to a story that is being told for the teller's own comfort as much as for the listener's. "She is 31 now," he continued. "She has her own life. A husband. A little boy I have seen only in photographs. It is not her fault. Novosibirsk is very far, and the trains are expensive, and life is life." He said this last part without bitterness, only as a simple fact, the way one might say that winter is cold or that rivers flow toward the sea. Marina thought of her own grandfather again, of the years she had let slip by, certain there would always be more time, certain that visits could always happen later, next month, next season. She thought of the hospital room, the empty chair beside his bed, the phone call that came too late. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, and she meant it for more than just his loneliness. The old man looked at her, really looked at her, as if seeing her for the first time. "You remind me of her," he said. "Not in your face. In your kindness. She had that same kindness, when she was young. I hope she still does. I like to believe she does." The transaction finished. Alina slid a small stack of bills across the counter, along with a receipt. "Take care, Foma Petrovich," she said, and there was, Marina noticed, a flicker of genuine warmth in her voice, the warmth of someone who dealt with this old man often enough to have grown fond of him despite the rules she had to enforce. They walked slowly toward the door together, the old man leaning slightly on his cane, Marina matching her pace to his. Outside, the snow had thickened, falling in soft, unhurried flakes that settled on the shoulders of his coat like a gentle kind of forgiveness. "Thank you," he said, once they stood beneath the small awning at the bank's entrance. "You did not have to do that. Many people would have walked past." It was 5 minutes, Marina said, though both of them understood it had been more than that it had cost her something small and given her something larger in return. The old man reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded photograph, its edges soft with handling. He held it out to her, and Marina took it carefully. It showed a little girl, perhaps 7 years old, standing beside a younger version of the man before her, both of them squinting into summer sunlight, both of them laughing at something outside the frame. "That is Katia," he said. "The real one. I carry it because some days I forget what her laugh sounded like, and looking at her face helps me remember the sound." Marina studied the photograph a moment longer before handing it back. "She's lucky to have you," she said. "I am the lucky one," he replied. "I only wish I had told her that more often, before the distance grew so wide." They stood together for a moment in the falling snow, two strangers who had shared something neither of them could quite name. Then the old man nodded, as if closing a chapter, and said, "I should go home before the road gets worse. Thank you again, Katia." He smiled at his own small joke, using the borrowed name one last time, and Marina found herself smiling too, though her throat felt tight. "Take care of yourself, Foma Petrovich," she said. She watched him walk away down the snow-covered street, his cane tapping softly against the pavement, his figure growing smaller and smaller until the falling snow swallowed him into the grey distance. Marina stood there for a long while after he had gone, the cold air sharp in her lungs, the photograph's image still bright behind her eyes. She thought about her own grandfather, about the calls she had meant to make, the visits she had postponed, the ordinary Tuesday afternoons she had let disappear without a second thought, believing, as everyone believes, that there would always be another chance. That evening, she called her mother, something she had not done in nearly 3 weeks. They spoke for over an hour, about small things mostly, the weather, an old family recipe, a cousin's new job, but underneath the small talk, Marina found herself listening more carefully than she had in a long time, holding on to the sound of her mother's voice the way the old man held on to a photograph. Before they hung up, her mother said, almost in passing, "You sound different tonight. Softer, somehow." Marina looked out her window at the snow still falling over Yelenovka, blanketing the rooftops, the parked cars, the quiet street where an old man had once asked a stranger to be, for 5 minutes, someone she was not. "I met someone today," she said. "He reminded me that we should call the people we love more often. Before the distance grows too wide." Her mother was quiet for a moment. "That's a good thing to remember," she said finally. "Yes," Marina agreed, watching the snow. "It is." And somewhere across town, in a small apartment warmed by an old radiator, Foma Petrovich Sokolov sat in his chair with the photograph in his lap, and for the first time in many months, he picked up his broken phone, turned it over in his hands, and decided that tomorrow, he would find a way to have it fixed, so that he might hear his granddaughter's real laugh again, instead of only remembering it.